Welcome back to Afters. It's your host, Anthony Cuellar here. I don't know about you, but I am glad that summer is nearly over. Yeah, it's been a fun summer, but I am just ready for something new and a new energy. I am ready to wear a jacket. Anyway, I'm just looking forward to what the new season will bring and all of the possibilities. It was really fun to meet Tiffany and learn more about their journey from Seattle's rock scene to playing some of the greatest parties in New York and worldwide. I have such a great time seeing T.Wan perform live. One of the first times being that legendary set at Honcho, which we talk about in this episode. But without further ado, T.Wan. Hi, Tiffany. How's it going?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's been a long time coming. Excited to chat with you. Standard question I always ask everyone at the start of the interview is, where did you grow up? Tell me a little bit about what your childhood was like.
So I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington. I actually grew up a little outside of Seattle, in this suburb called Mercer Island. It's kind of between Seattle and Bellevue. If you look at a map, it's this weird little shaped island. You have to drive across a floating bridge from Seattle to get to it. It was kind of a weird place to grow up, if I'm being really honest. My parents really wanted to move us there because, one, if you are from the Seattle area, you kind of know Mercer Island is this very wealthy suburb. And so my parents were we want to live here because they have a really good school system, and they wanted me to be there. But it was a very strange existence because I grew up with a lot of very wealthy kids, but I was not rich, and so I was just it was a very kind of confusing dynamic. And it was also a very white place to grow up. You know, there were other Asian kids, but there weren't a lot of other people of color. I think at the time I didn't realize that was a very isolating experience.
I've been to Portland. I haven't been to Seattle, but is there still this grunge culture there, or when you were growing up?
I mean, I don't know about grunge, but I feel Seattle is a very rock-centric city, and I think it still is to some extent. I feel the lens that I view it through now is mostly through dance music, but I think in general I do feel Seattle has a very interesting creative scene, musically and artistically as well. I do see different pockets of scenes starting to work with each other or collaborate more, because I do think that intergenerational knowledge is really important and interesting, and I like to see more of that just in any scene.
Yeah,
I think it's really important to have that knowledge share.
So then I guess you grew up around a lot of music, but what was your trajectory into becoming a DJ? What was that?
So I've always been super into music, kind of just in general. I feel my trajectory into dance music specifically wasn't a straight path, and I don't know if it is for anyone really. So I'm an only child, and I also spent a lot of time at the library. I was a huge nerd. I lived really close to the library, so when I had free time I would bike to the library. What I also really loved to do was you could check out tapes and whatever from the library, and I would go look at CD covers or album covers, and I would just check things out based on whether I thought the art looked cool or not. But it was really fun because I got into a lot of really random cool bands. I listened to Wire, Pink Flag, just because I liked the album art. I also read a lot of music magazines. I had a subscription to Spin magazine growing up, and so I would read that all the time. And just when I was in high school, I was the arts editor for my high school newspaper, and I would write all of the album reviews. I wouldn't let anyone else write them. I was just a huge nerd. I'm sure people found me totally insufferable at the time. Yeah, so I would do shit like that. And then when I went to college, I also continued wanting to write about music. I went to school and I studied journalism. I wanted to write about music, film, art, all those things. And I went to a ton of shows, but it was kind of not until maybe my early-ish to mid-20s that I started really kind of more listening to dance music. I always like to say that kind of my gateway into finding dance music myself was kind of through listening to Joy Division, and then learning that after the singer of Joy Division died, they continued as New Order, and I was oh, what is this other band? And then I was oh, they're actually really good. And I was I think I might like them more than Joy Division. There used to be this festival called Decibel Festival in Seattle. It's no longer active, but it ran for quite a while, and it would happen every year, and they would basically book all these electronic artists from around the world, really, and
Wow.
also like local artists, and they would have parties at all these different clubs around Seattle. Like Decibel Festival was also like a big gateway for me into dance music and like going to see like a ton of artists. You know, they would book huge artists like Moby, but then they would also book like a Hustle Audio showcase, you know, too. So they like booked dance music across like so many different genres. It's extremely well curated. Kind of sad that it no longer exists, but you know, it's also something where I was just like, man, I don't know like how financially sustainable running like a festival like this is, because like
Yeah.
they booked like insanely huge artists. And that's also how I met a lot of like my Seattle like electronic music community friends who like I still like am pretty good friends with so many people from. So that was like really special to me. But yeah, I guess like that was kind of like my like meandering path into like getting into dance music. And I didn't immediately like think that I wanted to be a DJ at all. I just was a huge music nerd, and I loved going to rock shows as a teenager, and then like, you know, and then like later as an adult, I just like loved going out. I love nightlife. I love music. I love like the feeling of just like enjoying music with other people.
Outside of Decibel Festival, were there any other parties that were formative for you?
Yeah, there were quite a few parties that were pretty important to me in continuing to like get more into dance music while I was living in Seattle. Second Nature is like a really great party. They're still going strong. I'm friends with a lot of the people who are in that collective still. The collective is comprised of a bunch of people who used to go to school in Tacoma, which is like maybe like 30, 40 minutes south of Seattle. And on the weekends, they would come up to Seattle and go to parties. And then after they graduated, they all moved up to Seattle and then started throwing their own parties. And they really brought this like kind of fresh perspective to techno to the city that I think really needed to happen. Their parties are so great. They were really important to me in continuing to learn more about dance music. And additionally, High and Tight is another party that was really important to kind of like my dance music discovery. Another party that's still going strong. They used to happen in this guy, Cordy Morrison's apartment. He lived in this loft, really nice loft apartment, and he would throw these like crazy parties there. I remember the last one that they threw, which I think was like the first one that I went to that was in that location, was Daniel Avery. Basically, like the cops told him he couldn't throw parties there anymore, and so he started, like he and like the other organizers started throwing them in this warehouse space in South Seattle. Stratton Warehouse had like a bunch of different studios, and they would do their parties in this space that was like by day like a glass blowing studio. But I saw like a lot of really amazing artists there. I saw like Voices from the Lake, DVS1, Optimo, and now like they're happening in like yet again a different space, but they're still going strong, and it's really cool to see that. And then there are like also like some other things like Flammable is this weekly house music party that happens on Sunday nights. I think they're celebrating their 20th anniversary of throwing that party, and I think it's like the longest running house party on the West Coast, something like that. But yeah, like I got to play that party actually a couple times before I moved. Yeah, they've been doing that for 2 decades, so super important to like not just like my dance music knowledge in Seattle, but like for a lot of people's, I think.
Have you kept in touch with many of the promoters, venues, or other DJ friends that you made during that time?
Yeah, definitely. I'm still really good friends with quite a few people from Seattle. So when I was living in Seattle, I was part of this collective called Tough, and that was like super important for me in terms of like learning how to like throw parties, and also was really important in my like kind of like trajectory in like learning how to DJ and like DJing more parties. So many of the people that I met in Tough, like I'm still like good friends with, like CCL, Succubase, Charlize, Liv Wu Tang. Like their careers have like gone like so far, and I'm like so proud of them. And I am like I feel really lucky to like be able to still call those people my friends. And yeah, like, and we all like met each other in Seattle and like lived there together and organized and like threw parties and like went through so many things together. I love them so much.
How did you learn to DJ? Did you teach yourself? Like, you talked about going to a lot of punk shows and rock shows, and we were talking a little bit about how like the spirit of dance, electronics, rave music is sort of this like unspoken like thing. But
yeah, I think there is like this kind of like unspoken or like I mean like this understood like parallel between like kind of like the DIY ethos of like punk and also like underground rave scenes. It's like people are like it's like a collective effort to like put on things, parties, and like, you know, you're doing them with a group of people and like you're sourcing sound, equipment, etc., and just like finding a space. All those things take so much work. And I see a lot of that in underground raving and also in like DIY like rock and punk stuff. But I learned to DJ. So I feel like I've been a late bloomer in my life in a ton of ways. Like the first time I ever did ecstasy, I was 25. Which maybe was good because my brain was more fully developed at the time. But I didn't learn to DJ until after I think I was like 31 or something. So I've been DJing for like almost 8 years now. Definitely probably a lot later than most people who DJ. But I remember I took a CDJ workshop that my friend Catherine, who I met through music stuff and like art stuff, like she's a wonderful person, lives in Seattle again now. She booked this workshop in Seattle, and the people hosting the workshop at the time, there were this collective called Women's Beat League, and my friend Alyssa, who we're still like good friends, they were a part of this, and that's kind of like how we met. And like they were a Portland-based collective, all femme collective, and they taught workshops teaching people how to DJ. And like all the workshops were focused specifically for like femme, non-binary people. And I feel like this is still something, you know, that we like struggle with as like non-male people, is just like not feeling represented or not feeling like the ability to like DJ or like do things creatively, like because things are in general so like male dominated, and they kind of still are. I think things are a lot better now than they were like, you know, 9 years ago. It was cool to like learn in that environment. And so like I took this workshop, learned how to use CDJs. It was super fun. And I was just like, wow, this is great. And previous to that, like one of my good friends had taken like a DJ workshop elsewhere. There's this place in Seattle called the Vera Project. It's like an all ages music venue, a really, really cool resource for anyone in Seattle. They also like, they have like a venue where they do shows, but they also do a lot of like workshops and like classes for people. And one of them is like a DJ workshop. And so my friend Rachel had taken a DJing class there and was like, oh, like you should really, like, I think you should learn to DJ. Like you have such good music taste. And so at the time I was like, no. But then this workshop came up and I was like, okay, I'm going to give it a try. And I had so much fun. And so then I was like, I'm going to keep doing this. And then I was like, man, CDJs are really expensive. And so I think I went on Craigslist and I bought like some like random Pioneer controller where like I could just like plug in a USB. It had like a really simple interface. All you could see was like the playlists, the BPMs, and then there are like 2 jog wheels. I just like spent months teaching myself how to beat match on this like little controller. And yeah, I had fun. It was like frustrating at first. Looking back, realized that I was like trying to mix a lot of like unquantized like house and disco music, and I was like, oh, that's probably why it was a lot harder for me to like learn how to DJ. I should have maybe started with like really simple techno or something. I don't know. So yeah, that's how I learned how to DJ. And then I think I like played my first real like show in front of people. Someone I knew was like, oh, like I heard you've been learning how to DJ, like do you want to like play this brunch party? It's very low key, blah blah blah. And I was like, cool, yeah, I'll do it. And then they're like, oh yeah, by the way, we only have CDJ 1000s, and so you're gonna have to burn CDs to play the show. And I was just like, okay. And like at the time I still had a laptop that had like a CD drive, and I was like, all right, I guess I'll like fucking order some blank CDs from Amazon, or like I can't remember if I did that, or like maybe I went to like Best Buy and bought like a rack of like blank CDs, you know. I was just like, who does this anymore? But you know, they exist. I burned a bunch of CDs to like play this party. It was really fun. That's fun. Yeah, it was a fun experience. I just like wanted to keep doing it, and I did. In general, I just like things that have like a good rhythm, like a good bass line, like really interesting drum patterns. The longer that I've like been DJing, it's like I like to listen to a lot of different things, and I try to incorporate all of that into how I play. Yeah, no, it definitely shows. You just drop some unexpected tracks sometimes. Like at the Movement show you did, there was like Luscious Jackson. I was like, okay. Oh yeah. It's exciting right now because I feel like most of the DJs that are playing and coming up are referencing a lot of things from
the past, and it's like really smart.
I agree. Like I like DJs that can surprise me and like not in like a gimmicky way. Some of my favorite DJs are people who every time I see them, it's a little different. And that's exciting to me.
You were talking earlier about like going to the library and taking out CDs and tapes and magazines and like even the CDs itself that you burned for your first set. Like these are all very like tangible things. So it's interesting now, like just the world that we're in now, where it's like everything's digital.
The way that I play is just like very similar to the way that I learned. And like, you know, I happened to learn to DJ in a very digital format. And so that is like primarily how I perform. Like, you know, occasionally I'll try to mix in a record. I'm definitely not going to pretend like I am great at being a vinyl DJ.
And do you sort of like shift and pivot as based on the crowd's reactions to stuff, or like are you pretty much like, this is what I'm giving tonight?
I think I always think about how I want to begin and end, and then everything else in the middle is negotiable.
I like that.
I think like, you know, I have like a rough outline of different pockets of sounds that I want to dip into. Like I'll be like, I want to spend 30 minutes doing like kind of like this polyrhythmic breaky stuff, or like I want to spend 30 minutes doing like 4/4 techno, or I want to like spend 30 minutes playing progressive-y stuff, or like, you know, I want to spend 30 minutes playing like synthy 80s stuff. I want to tell a story in a way. For me, hopefully in my head, it makes sense the different directions that I'm going in, and hopefully that translates to people like when they hear me.
Hey, it's Anthony again. I normally use this space to reach out to the community, to plug any events or activations, anything like that that I think are really cool. But I actually wanted to share an exciting announcement. I will be one of the hosts of the next Miss Softy party on Friday, September 20th. The lineup includes Partok, Rachel Noon, Julia Govar, and Samuel Fish. It's going to be a blast. It's one of my favorite parties in New York City right now. I've actually talked about it in this episode with Tiffany. So follow Afters the Pod on Instagram, and I'll share a special link for listeners of Afters the Pod, and include a link in the show notes. Hope to see you there. One other quick announcement I wanted to share was a promo for Afters the Pod on Instagram, but mostly on SoundCloud, because there's an entire mix series there and only there. Artists have included Dula, Philip Morgan, Dim, and Tech Nana, with more to come. I would love your help to get all of the people that I've interviewed and release mixes from booked. Get them booked for gigs because they're so talented, and let's keep lifting each other up. You mentioned earlier about the workshop that you took, which was like femme focused, 9 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts on like that now. Any ideas that you want to expand on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the representation of like femme DJs, femme, queer, non-binary, like trans DJs has like gotten so much better over like even like in the last like 5 years. I still think that music and like DJing still does like feel very male dominated to an extent. I think that like there are people who are like aware of just like wanting to make sure that and I think like also like what I see in like New York a lot, and I think because like New York is a much bigger city, is like there are like people in those specific communities who are like just doing parties for themselves, and I think that's like really incredible to see. Parties that are like really focused on like, okay, like the lineup, everyone on this lineup is like a POC trans person, and it's also a party thrown by a POC trans person.
Exactly.
And I think that is incredible to see. You weren't seeing that maybe like 10, 15 years ago. If those things were happening, it's like they were like super, super underground. Seeing that more and more is incredible to me.
Yeah, like you can just, if it doesn't exist, just make it yourself kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like now we are living in a time where like the accessibility of things is so much more democratized. Some people kind of like complain about that. Like everyone's just like, well, you know, anyone can be a DJ these days. And I'm just like, but is that a bad thing? Like you kind of talk about that like it's a negative thing. And I feel like that's like the gatekeeping that has like kept so many non-male people from accessing these things like for various reasons. And so I think it's great that everyone can be a DJ actually.
Do you think, I guess like festivals versus like venues, is there more challenges like getting on a festival lineup, or is it like certain venues? Is there a channel that's been more like welcoming than others?
I mean, That's an interesting question for sure. I mean, I feel like technically I've only really played like one festival, which is Honsho.
Incredible
And
set, by the way.
thank you. That set was really, really special to me. I have played in Detroit a couple times, but not for like the main festival. I guess in terms of venues that I've played in New York, it's kind of like, yeah, I feel like I have this conversation with people a lot about like, you know, oh, how do you get booked at XYZ place? And it's like, I don't know, there's not really like a formula necessarily. Like the places that I've played that I've enjoyed the most, you know, I've played Nowadays a couple times, and like I feel really like fortunate that I have gotten to play at a place like that, because, you know, it is like, you know, people see Nowadays as like, you know, this very like special place musically as a dancer and as like a DJ. I've played at Basement a couple times as well, although both times have been like specifically for Rect. I've never been booked.
Really? Rect?
Yeah, I've never been booked by Basement in-house. Maybe someday. But I've been booked by Ron and Ryan twice for Rect, which has always been just a delightful party to play for so many reasons.
And that's in the main room, right?
Yeah, the first time I played Rect was in the main room of Basement, and then most recently, I played earlier this year for the 13-year anniversary, and that was in Studio, which I loved playing in that space. Like, Studio is such a funny space to be in as a dancer, but as a DJ, it's like really fun because like you're so close to everyone.
Yeah.
And I think I like playing in like more intimate, small spaces like that because you can kind of just like feel everyone's energy a lot better.
That's cool. Yeah.
I don't know if that answered the question specifically, but yeah.
It was just, because I mean, like, what you probably said was like someone maybe up and coming was asking you that like, how do you get booked for stuff?
I have had people like ask me that before, and I'm just like, it's really hard for me to answer that question because I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing specifically that people ask me to play. And like, I think what I say to anyone is just keep doing what you're doing, put out mixes, do parties. If you are not getting booked for a party, throw your own fucking party and like book your friends, like book yourself even if you want. Yeah. Be careful of what time slot you put yourself at if you're booking your own party. But you know, like if people aren't asking you to do stuff, do it yourself. Yeah. I don't want it to sound like a pull yourself by your bootstraps thing, but it's like, if you're not getting things that you want, make it happen for yourself. And I see people doing that a lot, and it's like really cool to see. And like there's no shortage of parties here. Yeah.
Have you thrown your own parties before?
So I am involved in throwing a party. I help with a party called Antidote. Yeah. So
I haven't been to it. I'd love to. Yeah. Tell me about what that party is.
So Antidote came about like a couple years ago, and I work with a few people on that. Lychee, who is also like a very beloved DJ in New York City. Elise and I have like known each other for several years, like just kind of like through what I like to just call like the rave network of America. Casually, but just like, I've known Elise for many years before I even moved to New York. Tom Sabalik, amazing producer and DJ. Nutrition Facts, our friend Austin, also amazing DJ. Siobhan, who is like our lighting design person, and then Yaya, who's a yoga teacher, because at the beginning of all of our parties, the first hour is a yoga class. All of us work together on Antidote, and that came about like a couple years ago when I think this was like Clarissa Kimsky lives here now in New York, but this was like before she was moving here, and I think she was supposed to play a party. I don't remember what it was, but like the party fell through, and Elise was like, oh, like maybe we should like try to book something. Clarissa was supposed to play in New York, but then the party fell through. I can get us a booking at Magic City, and like let's throw a party for her so that she, you know, can get paid and like and play music. And so that was like the very first Antidote was like Clarissa played. Yeah,
I love that story. Like let's get it together.
They were just like, let's just do it. And then like we threw the first Antidote, and then we were like, wow, that was really cute and really fun. Maybe we should do it again. And so then we did. And so we had the first two Antidote parties at Magic City, and then Magic City has since then unfortunately closed. And so now we've been throwing the parties at a space kind of in like Williamsburg, Bushwick area called Hex House. And so Hex House has been like a great space to do that in. It's like a warehouse. We have to like bring in all of our own sound, and we bring our own DJ equipment, and Siobhan, our lighting person, has like installed lights in the space and like, you know, always like does something a little different each time. And so it's been a great party. We've been doing it like quarterly at this point. The last one we did was also a fundraiser for Palestine. So we raised money to buy eSIM cards for Palestine. Yeah. So it's been also great to like be able to use that party as like not just like a place to have fun, but also as like something that can be like a tool for meaningful change. Because I think people struggle with that a lot in terms of thinking about the relationship between like raving and dance music and like being political. And I think that's probably a whole other conversation that we can have. And so I'm glad that we were able to like do that with Antidote.
What are your thoughts on the rave scene and politics and activism? You don't really see a lot of cross section. I don't see a lot of people at the raves than at the protests, or even vice versa. It's like, it's an interesting cross section. What are your thoughts on that?
I feel like there is like kind of like a subset of ravers that I know are very, very active in like either organizing or going to protests. I have like a handful of friends who have been like arrested at protests who are also dedicated ravers as well. I think I would agree with you in that like maybe there's not as much crossover as like we'd probably like to see.
Yeah.
But there are people in our scene who are doing some really interesting work. Are you familiar with like DJs Against Apartheid?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is like something that I've also like signed on to.
Yeah. I saw that.
And a lot of people have as well. And I know a bunch of people who are like kind of in the core organizing team, either like well-known New York DJs or like friends of mine. Like one of my friends helped build the website, and like I actually like didn't know that. She like told me that like a couple months ago. I was like, wait, I was like, you built the website? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, what?
That's cool.
It was really cool because like I love to see people being able to like use their skills in this way and like to contribute. So yeah, I think there are people in the scene who are like trying to enact like real material change. It does kind of feel like an uphill battle.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, and I meant also when I was talking about activism, like across all like queer rights, trans rights, like women, like
for sure.
But yeah, I do agree. That's a good point. I do see like more things are happening, but it is funny there's many times where I've been at a protest like for hours and I just go right to the rave, like the basement or something. It's like such an energy.
Yeah, it's a real energy shift. It's just like do I feel ready to do this? And it's like it's going from like one extreme to the other almost. As
a party goer, like what's your ethos, I guess, when you enter a space, or like do you set your intentions when you go out, or like I don't know, I've kind of started doing that more, just trying to stay present and grounded. How do you enter a space as not a DJ, like as a party goer?
I mean, I think that's a really good question. I think like when I go to a party, I'm not really like super into like party hopping necessarily. Like I find that to be like a little distracting, because sometimes when I'm like I'm gonna go to this party and then this party, it's like when I'm at the first place I have a good time, but then I'm always like looking at my watch. Do I have to like get ready soon to leave for the next thing? And like I feel like you can't really like enjoy yourself. I like to try to stay in one place for a while. I set the intention of just like whether it's like a specific artist that I want to see or like a specific friend that I want to support, I want to make sure that I go and I'm there for like a significant amount of time to like absorb whatever like they are putting out into the crowd. Enter with intention to like listen and be focused and like try not to get too distracted by social dynamics or whatever.
I mean, I've definitely seen that. Obviously saw you at Miss Softy and
Miss
Sustain. You definitely, I could see what you're saying totally. Shifting a little bit, do you have, as a DJ, like have you had any crazy experiences, whether it's like a venue, like any kind of thing that stands out for you as like a memorable situation or like not so great experience?
There's like two that I can think of that are kind of like on opposite sides of the spectrum. And then like one experience that I had DJing that was like really weird and stressful. I remember I got asked by some friends in Portland to play like this outdoor renegade thing, and it was like really cute.
What does that mean, renegade?
Like, so a renegade is basically where usually outdoors someone brings a generator and then you set up a sound system and some gear.
Like a flash mob situation?
Yeah, and you kind of just like hope that no one calls the cops. So that's a renegade.
Okay.
So my friends were throwing a renegade somewhere in Portland and I was like, yeah, I would love to play. I started playing and then the generator kept dying. And so I would start playing for like 10 minutes and then everything would shut off. And then I have to start playing again. And it happened like 3 times. It totally like killed the vibe. And I was just
man, that's stressful.
Damn. And it made me feel like really insecure. I'm like, oh, like, does anyone like what's happening right now? Because I've had to restart several times, and so that was like a really bizarre experience. But my friends were also like, they were so apologetic and they're just like, I'm so sorry, must have been so awkward.
But you didn't pull a Grimes and like scream and have a meltdown, did
you? No, I didn't have a meltdown. I was just like, okay, I'm gonna push through, I'm gonna play for the the time and like just do it. I think everyone who DJs needs to have like at least one humbling experience, whatever that may be. And I think you learn a lot from it no matter what.
Yeah.
you just have to roll with the punches. And I guess like in that instance, you're just like, yeah, like it's a renegade. It's going to be unpredictable. It's going to be weird. The generator's maybe going to die, and then you're going to probably not be super happy with your set. And that's okay, because like hopefully you'll just get to play another set that's better.
And it's kind of in line with the spirit of like what we were saying, DIY punk. Like you got to kind of expect, I mean, I kind of like when things aren't so refined and polished. Like give me like feedback, like make it messy.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. And like, yeah, sometimes you're just going to have an off time, whether it's like because of the generator or because you were in a bad mood. And so it can go either way. But yeah, I guess on the opposite side of that spectrum, still the experience that was like probably the most transformative for me as like a DJ was playing Honcho Camp Out. That set resonated with so many people, and I still like, that was like 2 years ago, and I still have people come up and tell me how amazing it was. And like it always like surprises me every time I hear that. Obviously it's very like flattering, and it's also just feels like very like heartwarming that you know, people felt that way. And like I love to hear it. That set was really special for a lot of reasons. Like one being like I wasn't actually on the original lineup that year. Like I got asked to play Honcho Camp Out like 3 weeks before the festival.
Oh my god.
I know. I feel like some of my friends know this story, but maybe not everyone does. I feel like that's also kind of like just the nature also of like a DIY festival, is like sometimes like someone falls out of the lineup for whatever reason. And so then Clark Price messaged me like 3 weeks before the festival and was like, hey, like feel free to like decline if you feel like this is too rushed or whatever. But like, you know, we had someone pull out of the lineup and you've been on our short list. Would you want to play this year? And I had to take a moment. I think I remember like I called one of my friends and I was like, oh my God, what do I do? Like, should I say yes? And she was like, just do it. And like, I kind of like remembered also something that my mom has always given me, like this advice, which is just like, say yes and figure it out later.
That's great advice.
I know. I was like, Mom,
that's
I was
really
like,
good advice.
Great advice, Mom. I was like, yeah, I know that I didn't listen to you a lot when I was growing up, but like this advice, great advice.
Should make that a shirt or something.
I know. Yeah. Say yes and figure it out later.
That's cool.
And so I did it, and I was like terrified because I was like, everyone else has had like months to prepare, and I get 3 weeks. Okay, let's go. And so
well,
yeah,
you were prepared. I mean, you played a Renegade show.
I really like shut myself off from the world for like 2.5 weeks.
Wow.
And you know, I was already going to Honcho anyways. I'd already paid for a ticket, but then you know, like now I was like, okay, now I'm playing. My experience has gone from just like going to like, okay, now I'm participating.
Now I gotta pack my gear.
Yeah, I know. I was like, now I gotta like figure out. Yeah. And so
was that your first time there when you played?
It was also my first time going to Honcho as well. Yeah, there were so many unknowns getting there. I was just like, okay, I've never been here. I got there and I was just like, wow, this is
And you
amazing.
were living in New York?
Yeah, I was already living here. So this was I played Honcho in 2022. So I had been living in New York a little, like just under a year. I got to the festival, I think on a Thursday, settled in, watched some of the sets, and I was like, oh, this is so much fun. And then I remember going to the Grove stage for the first time, which is where I was supposed to play. And I go there and I was like, this is fucking massive. This is huge.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'd never played in front of that many people in my entire life. And I kind of had like a meltdown. Like I was like with some friends. I wouldn't say like a full on panic attack, but I had this like this moment where I was just like, I don't know if I can do this. And I sat down with like 2 of my friends and they were just like, everything's going to be great. Everyone is here to have a good time. Like no one's here to like judge you.
Yeah.
This is just like the vibe of Honcho is just like celebratory. Everyone just wants to celebrate each other. And I was just like, okay. The night that I played, I was like playing after Analog Soul and before Roxy Moore. And so I was just like, okay, Analog Soul, they're incredible. But I was just like, okay, I'm like totally going to change the mood now. And I also was
That's
just
what we like about Honcho. I love the shift. Like someone ends, someone else starts, and it's like...
Yeah. And that was all like so new to me too, because I'd never played a festival. So I was like, okay, like, do I mix into their last track, or like, what do I do? Like, what's the vibe? And so like, I was kind of like, I kind of know how I want to start, but then I was like, do I need to change how I start because I need to mix into them? But then I remember walking up to the decks, and then one of the sisters in Analog Soul was like, oh, like, this is our last track. Like, let me know and we'll fade out. So that was like also like revelatory for me. I was like, okay, I was like, cool. Now
that's cool. Communication. It's important.
Yeah, it was great. And I played. It was crazy.
Is that kind of like, is there like passing of the baton? Not specifically just Analog Soul, but when you're playing after somebody, is there like, what's that communication typically like?
For me, when I'm like passing it off to someone else, I'll usually be like, hey, this is my last track, or like I can play like another track if you're not feeling ready, or just like let me know when you feel ready to play, and then we can switch off. Is
it typically like camaraderie or like that, like kind of?
I mean, I think ideally it should be.
Yeah.
And most of I don't think I've ever had a handoff experience where it was like aggressive or like weird or something.
That's
but,
good.
You know, usually I think like you want to give like the person before you, like you don't want to feel like you're like crowding their space like too soon before they're supposed to be done playing, but you also like want to make sure that your USBs are being read correctly, and like you want to like plug in your shit. I think you just want to be like polite, try to communicate well, and you know, all those things.
Are there any other projects that you're working on or anything upcoming, things you're doing outside of the regular gigs?
I mentioned like I do a party called Antidote. I also like, so I do a monthly radio show on Nudes Radio, which I've done for like, I think coming up on 5 years, called Flow State. It's on a Tuesday every 4 weeks.
I was giving people a challenge for like genres that they don't normally play to like make a mix, but I think we were talking offline about maybe switching it up and doing like a word generator.
Yeah, so, a mood prompt.
Exactly. So I'm going to do that right now.
Okay.
Let's see what it gives us. It's randomwordgenerator.com for anyone.
For anyone that needs a random word.
Exactly. So your prompt is forecast.
Forecast.
Should we do a different one?
Let's try another one. Okay. I don't know how to...
Oh my god, these words suck. Sorry.
Just stop.
We're doing this in real time, you know, it's DIY. What is... Oh my god, this is really bad. Maybe this is not a good website to plug. Ambiguous? Serious? Healthy. This one says electronic. I'm like, that's too on the nose.
Nope.
No, we're not doing that. That's too easy.
Too easy.
Heady?
Let's go with heady. All right.
Give us a heady
mix.
Mix.
Coming up
soon.
TBD.
So you have a radio show, you have a party, Antidote, but if you were curating a lineup for your own thing, it could be with people alive, dead. You can go as crazy with that response as you want. Who would you book on a lineup?
I think that's a really great question. There's like, I feel like there's like so many people that I would love to play with or like see play. I think like something that I've been thinking a lot about too is just like when I think about like representation, like in terms of just like being Asian. And I feel like I have like kind of like talked about this a little bit with like my other DJ friends who are also Asian American. I would just like love to book an East Asian centric lineup. My mom is originally from Taiwan and like my dad is Chinese. You know, when I say Asian, it's like, you know, that is like Asian as a diaspora, like of course is like across like many different countries. I would love to like book a lineup that is East Asian focused. My friend Stephanie, who DJs as Formosa, amazing. Like she co-runs a party called Jellyfish, which I think some people may know of. They also like work a lot with Honcho.
Formosa, you said?
Formosa, which actually is like a word to reference Taiwan, actually. Like beautiful. It's like...
Is your name a reference?
T.Wan. Okay, so people have thought that, and like I actually was not the original intention. T.Wan is literally just like my first initial and my last name, but you could also infer Taiwan from it. But yeah, so lineup. So like, yeah, Stephanie Formosa, amazing DJ. Club Chow, who lives in Chicago. Also, I feel like very underrated. And Bezier lives in Berlin now. Robert is also, Robert's incredible. Also Taiwanese. And also for the record, I don't know if Kevin is Taiwanese as well, but you know, I know that Kevin is Chinese at least. Thinking about DJs who kind of like come from maybe like similar backgrounds as I. And also, you know, extending past just like DJs who are also Chinese. Kei Haruchi in Portland, who's amazing. Kei is like from Japan originally. I know them through kind of like also the Pacific Northwest Rave Network, I suppose, because like they're based in Portland. But yeah, it would be like really cute to just like curate a lineup of East Asian DJs who like I've known for quite some time and like who I think are doing like really cute and amazing things.
That's great. I would love to see that.
Yeah.
And then last question. Do you have someone that you would love to back with that you haven't? Like
I do think about this like a lot.
Do you do many back-to-backs? I don't think I've seen you play.
You know, actually for all of our Antidote parties, like we've kind of like, I don't know like how we settled on this like format. All of our parties, like the residents will choose someone that they want to be with. And so like we've all kind of had a chance to do that. And I've had a lot of really fun B2Bs like with either one of the other residents or with someone we bring in from outside of the collective. Our last party, I played B2B with Aaron J, incredible DJ, runs a series called Sure Thing. Used to be based in SF and then lived in Boston and now lives here. But I feel like I need to also add Aaron to like my list of like who would be on like my ideal lineup. Because like Aaron is also like incredible Asian American DJ. So yeah, he also has to be on the lineup as well. Aaron and I played back to back. We had never played before. Like, always admired him as a DJ, and we had an incredible time playing together. I would love to play with Aaron again. If anyone wants to book me and Aaron for a B2B, do it. But okay, so for people that I haven't B2B'd yet, who I would really love to play back to back with Ron Like Hell. You know, I've played Ron's party a couple times. I really admire the thing that I love about Ron, and I've said this about like other DJs that I really love too, is like every time you see them, it's a little different. And like Ron has such a range of musical knowledge. And I think like Ron also does this very special thing that I feel like not all DJs do, but like Ron, I think, really listens to like music that people are making in the scene right now and tries to play that in his sets, and also connects those dots with older music too, which is, I feel like, something that I think I try to do for myself a lot as well. Like I'll play music that my friends make, but then I'll also like play older music as well, and like, you know, connect everything together. I would love to play with Ron. I would also love to play with Clark Price. I follow a lot of different people on like Bandcamp for like, you know, what they buy and I feel like Clark and I have had this conversation with each other too, where Clark's
so you're like stalking his bot, like
a little bit, and or like, you know, I'll see him out and he'll be like, oh, he's like, I saw what you bought recently.
That's
and,
so
like,
funny.
And like, so I feel like we have some like nice crossover in terms of like admiring each other's Bandcamp collections. So that could be really fun and cute. Yeah, I think those are like two people that off the top of my head that I can think of. I would also like love to B2B with like some of like my friends that I've like known for many years, like from Seattle, who like now live either here or in other places. Like CCL is a good friend.
Oh my god, CCL's set at Honcho was incredible.
Yeah, Chechi is incredible, just like visionary in terms of like DJing. Like I love talking to them about DJing, and like we have a lot of like very similar views on how DJing should be, just in the sense that like there are so many of either unspoken rules or rules that are put upon us as like people who play music that I don't really think we need to listen to. And I like the idea of just like breaking conventions, or just like not listening to like these like supposed rules that we're supposed to follow. They really embody that, and like, you know, I think about that a lot when I play music for myself as well.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, those sound like really good back-to-backs. Actually, Sterling, the last interview, mentioned CCL as someone that he would like
cute.
to back-to-back with.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, I would love to see that too. I would pay to see that.
Well, that's all the questions I have for you. This was really fun talking with you outside of the club space.
Yeah, I love this. Thank you so much for having me. Heady mix coming up.
Yeah, heady mix. All right, thank you. This episode of Afters was produced, edited, directed by Anthony Cuellar. Recorded and mastered by Rhino Clark in New York City. Original music by Nicolo Bernardi. Show art by Waldo Baez.